Can they see it?
They will be able to see us now. And it went right to Jill. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our April 18th, third Thursday continuing education program. We do have a presenter joining us in person today. Again, just some housekeeping. Make sure you are muted. Please turn off your camera. Put any questions or issues you're experiencing in the chat, which is monitored by Sarah Taylor, one of our staff members, and please rename yourself as either your first and last name or first name and library name, so we can make sure to give you credit for attending. However, I do want to say that while this is continuing education, this does not count as continuing education for cataloging credit, just general continuing education. So April is a super busy month, and we are celebrating also Earth Day in April. So today we're going to have a speaker talk about solar initiatives and what they have done at their library. We did originally have a couple other speakers planned to join us today. Chet Brandt from Tri-City was unable to make it. Whenever they built his building, they incorporated green features and energy saving features into the design of the build. And we were going to talk about what that is like with a small library, doing that at the very beginning of a building project. Because Chet was unable to join us today, but if you have any questions, please reach out to him. Also, we might have an overview of just how the solar works as an energy feature. Lee might be giving that explanation of that. But we do have our speaker here today, Leander Spearman, the executive director of Belleville Public Library. And he recently installed solar panels to is it a Carnegie building?
It is.
To his Carnegie building, and then also has a couple other initiatives in the works. So Lee, I'm going to go ahead and start your slideshow and turn it over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So just a little brief background about how I came to install solar panels at my library. Approximately 2.5 years ago, I was looking into ways to reduce expenses. One of the biggest expenses is utility costs. So I was looking into solar initiatives. I contacted a few solar companies, contacted Ameren to see what was available, what the costs were for installing solar. And at the time, it was a little cost prohibitive for me to do it. A few months later, I was actually contacted by an individual who represented a solar company with a program that was started in Illinois called Illinois Solar for All. Without going into too much detail, because we're going to get an explanation of that a little bit later, it's a program where not-for-profits and government entities can take advantage of having solar panels installed on their facilities with no upfront cost to that organization. It's underwritten by a third-party funder who, in exchange for funding the project, receives all the tax credits associated with solar energy, and the organization receives the benefit of reduced energy costs for a period of time. After several years, then that energy savings all goes to the library because the funder donates it to the library after all tax credits have been expended. So it's really free solar for the library. So that's the project that I pursued. It was completed at the end of 2023, went online. In November of 2023, we came online, and we've been on solar ever since. So here is a picture of my library. My main concern when pursuing this project, being a Carnegie library, was of course, can you see the solar panels? I knew if the solar panels were visible from the street, it was going to be a no-go, because I have a very active historical commission in my community, and they would have frowned big time if the panels were actually visible. You cannot see the solar panels on my roof from any angle you look at on my library. Cannot be seen. If you go to the next slide. This is actually a rendering that the company provides of what the solar panels will look like on your roof to kind of lay out how many solar panels they can fit on there, where they're arranged, and something else this does, it also shows shadow lines. You know, you've got trees, other buildings, other things that cast shadows. So it kind of shows you how the shadows will fall during various times of the day and obstruct your solar panels. And that's also something they use to determine whether or not the roof is a good location for your actual solar panels. Because if you got a lot of trees and you're shaded 50% of the day, might not be the best candidate for solar panels on the roof. Another option, if they can't put them on the roof, is a ground mounted system, but you gotta have a lot of available space for a ground mounted system. So we were able to have roof mounted solar panels. We have 117 solar panels on our roof right now. Next slide. And this is what they actually look like on the roof. You can see, they sit very low to the roof, cannot be seen from the street. Another thing that I like about this system, they are not physically attached to the roof at all. They're counterweighted down. So if I decide to change my mind and say, no, I don't want this anymore, come take this stuff off my roof, they're easily removed and there'll be no sign that they were ever on the roof. So I know a question a lot of you may be asking, with them just being counterweighted down, what about wind and high wind lifting them off? While I'm sure it's possible, you know, we've had several major storms since these panels have been installed. They have not moved an inch. So they're pretty well heavily weighted down. We go to the next slide. And this is the other half of my roof. You can see quite a few solar panels on the roof producing, right now they're producing 60 to 70% of our total energy consumption right now. So not producing everything, but offsetting it by quite a bit. These are the inverters on the side of my building that actually converts the energy to usable energy and goes into the building. So this is really the only place where you physically penetrate the building, where they're actually gonna have to drill some holes in the building. I had to drill a couple of holes and tie it into the panel. So, not there yet. A couple of things to consider when you're considering solar panels. First consideration is your roof, the condition of your roof. Before you even call the company out to put the solar panels on, you might want to have your roof inspected. If your roof is getting older and is going to need to be replaced in the next 5 to 10 years, you probably want to do the roof first. Otherwise, you'll be pulling the panels off, replacing the roof, putting the panels back on, this extra expense. If your roof does need replacing, that will be your expense. Even under this Illinois Solar for All program, any repairs to the roof pre-installation, that's your expense. So if you need a new roof, get the new roof first. Some other considerations would be type of roofs. I know a lot of the libraries, architects like to get creative with roof angles and pitches and fancy looking roofs. Not so good when it comes to solar panels. If you got one of those weird angle roofs with multiple angles, probably won't be a good candidate for solar panels because they wouldn't be able to put enough panels on your roof to produce enough energy to make it worth your while. If that's the case for you, then a ground mount system will probably be your best bet if you have the space. So I'll stop right there and see if there were any questions.
I have several. That's a big surprise, so I'm going on. So our roofs are slanted, aren't they?
Yes.
Would it be possible to perhaps have like a deck or a carport kind of thing over a parking lot? Would they fund maybe that and or putting the solar panels on that?
Possibly that probably be a better question for Steve down there who's a consultant.
Okay, so hold that question. Have you had any issues with hail?
Not yet,
Have you had some hail since they've been?
nothing significant, but the good part about this program is, I don't own these solar panels right now. They're owned by the third party who funded them.
Mhm.
And for 6 years, we're basically leasing the solar panels from this individual. Maintenance, repair, all that is covered. So if we have a major hailstorm and it destroys several panels, I just make a phone call, and actually, they probably know it before I would. They send someone out, they replace the solar panels, won't cost me anything.
So does their insurance cover it or does your insurance cover it?
Right now, the actual panels is covered by the third party.
Okay. Is it storing energy?
No.
Okay.
So batteries are an option, but that's an added expense. And basically the return on investment for batteries just isn't cost effective right now. That's always something that can add it down the road.
Mhm. Those are my first three questions. I'm sure there'll be more. Maybe somebody else has a question.
So before we go to the next question, I failed to mention, probably the biggest question people might have is what did this project cost? Even though I didn't pay for it, this project cost a little over $100,000.
How have your power bills changed? What kind of return are you seeing?
I'm still tracking that because one of the things I had to do, Belleville is in a power purchase agreement with the whole city. So I kind of had to get special permission to carve the library out of that agreement. But the way the bills come, we still get part of our power through that agreement because the panels don't offset it 100%. So I'm still trying to figure out how to separate the library's portion from this huge citywide bill, which is taking me a little while to figure out. I will say our energy bills just from the solar generation are running about $120 a month.
Wow. That's a big building too.
Yes,
How many square feet is your building?
we are, I think, just under 30,000 square feet. A pretty big building, paying an electric bill, $117 a month right now.
Wow.
And we haven't hit the peak solar generating season yet.
Mhm.
Sorry, do you know about how many kilowatt hours per month on average you guys run?
Let me, 1 second, because I've got the monitor out on my phone.
Just in case the owl didn't pick that up, we're talking about the savings to Belleville's electric bill, and Lee has an app on his phone that tells him how many I don't know the term.
Kilowatt hours.
Kilowatt hours, are available.
So. Looking. Let's see, this month so far, we have generated 3.57 megawatt hours.
And you have two buildings, right, Lee?
Correct.
Does this cover both buildings?
No, it's just the main bill.
So would you have to have solar panels at the other building for it to cover there?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if like the energy would somehow be shared.
I mean,
Yeah, well, you know.
I'm sure there's a way you could transfer energy from one to the other, but it probably would not be cost.
Well, you're using all that you're producing right now, and that's going back
You know,
into.
right now, we're using all that we're producing, but I need to track it over the course of an entire year.
Mhm.
There will be periods where we are producing more than we use, and then that just goes back on the grid and our meter runs backwards and we will get a credit for that. One question that I had that I didn't realize, under solar power, that a lot of people may have a misnomer about is if the power goes out, you're still out. Even if it's a bright sunny day out, If the power goes out, you're out too. The
Okay.
panels don't generate electricity, and that's for safety concern for people working on the lines. If you were generating power and everyone else is out, you could backfeed power to the grid and possibly kill somebody.
So you don't wanna do that.
So unless you have battery storage, when the power's out, you're out.
Fascinating.
I don't see that any questions have come in through the chat.
Okay, this is Colleen at IHLS. I had to join a little late and I do have a few questions.
Oh, go ahead, Colleen.
Sure. Okay. Leander, whenever you did this, I assume it was an RFP process then?
Actually, no.
Oh, okay.
A company who specializes in doing solar for nonprofit through a program called Illinois Solar for All, which we're going to hear a little bit about a little bit later. And they approached me, so I did not have to bid this project at all because no city or library funds were used to complete this project. So I didn't have to bid anything.
And you know.
Wow.
We do not own it. We're essentially leasing the system right now.
Okay, well, that's interesting. And then the way I understood it with solar panels is that there's a difference between just covering what your normal bill would be and then receiving credits or money back. And I think you just said that you were receiving credits back. Are you familiar with that, or is that a little bit more details that I would probably have to ask the company about?
He can probably explain it better, but basically, the number of solar panels and the efficiency of the panels you get determine how much energy you produce. And when the company comes out, they look at your existing electric bills and they try and design a system that will offset your electric bill. They try and shoot for no less than 60%. Of course, the higher they can offset that, the better it is for you. One of the things I liked about this project when I entered into it is they said, if we cannot save you at least 60% on your energy bill, we're not gonna move ahead with the project because it just wouldn't be worth it.
Okay.
So they're gonna save you at least 60% of your energy bill, probably more. And of course, there will be days when this system produces all of your energy needs. If it's a day that you're closed, and it's a sunny day and there's no one in the library, you're just running a few emergency lights, it's probably gonna take care of all your energy needs. And in that case, the meter runs backwards and you get credit for that energy and it just goes off to the grid. So it's
Okay.
probably not likely you're gonna get a system that's gonna offset 100% of your energy needs, because most people just don't have that much physical roof space to put that many panels on there, but it's gonna offset it by quite a bit.
Okay, I'll stop taking up. I have many more, but I could ask you privately unless other people want me to continue asking questions.
Well, your questions are interesting, Colleen.
Okay, well, I have more. How long then did you say you've had it before? Had these installed for?
I'm sorry?
How long have you had these installed for?
The system has been live since November. They actually finished installation prior to that, but there are all kinds of inspections and sign-offs that have to happen. So they were actually sitting on my roof, and it's very frustrating to have solar panels sitting on your roof, nice, bright sunny days, but you can't turn it on. So they were actually completed, I believe September, but I got to actually turn it on late November.
Okay, so then I'm curious about for the winter months where there's a lot of overcast, did you still see a good amount of solar kilowatt hours banked?
They still produce. I mean, the good thing about solar panels nowadays, they've gotten much more efficient. Since I've had this system in place, there have only been 2 days where they generated no energy.
Wow.
Even sunny, overcast days, they're going to generate something. And those 2 days when they generated nothing were probably days where it snowed and the panels were covered and the snow hadn't melted yet. but they're going to generate something. Even on the cloudiest day, they're gonna generate something. Not much, but something.
Okay, and then the only last question that I could think of right now was, when I preliminary started looking into research on these, it looked like there was federal funding and then the state of Illinois funding and then Ameren funding. Did you end up receiving money from all three of those, or how did it work with you so that you're leasing the equipment? Or maybe you don't know all those exact details.
I can answer it, and our consultant is chiming in, so I'll give you my answer, then I'll let him chime in and answer. So I didn't receive any money because this was funded by a third party who fronted all of the costs. But if this is a project that you are going to fund yourself, being a not-for-profit, we could not receive any of the tax credits. I don't know if IHLS could or not. They're kind of slightly different. But we didn't receive any money from any of those entities other than being able to utilize the Illinois Solar for All program, which is a state program that allows not-for-profits to get solar. I don't know if the consultant has a better answer, but so he'll get to that when we get to him.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
You said the final approvals took about 2 months. What was the installation process like for you guys?
Installation process was very easy. The company we work with was very easy to work with. They coordinated everything, delivery of the equipment, installation. You do need to have a good amount of space to stage, because there's a lot of equipment that needs to be staged. There are lifts, cranes possibly, depending on how tall your building is. So you do need to have adequate space to stage all the equipment, but installation took about 2 weeks or so.
Wow.
Was it all?
No,
So does, anyone have to clean them?
the company sends someone out periodically to clean them, but they say just general rain keeps them clean enough to function, but there is maintenance attached to this where they'll come out, inspect them, make sure everything's working correctly, make sure the squirrels haven't chewed on the wires, which does happen,
Yeah.
and make sure things are still working.
So in the future, when this is yours, will you have to have a maintenance contract with the
Yes,
company? Okay. And, does the solar company find the third party, or does the library have to do that?
the solar company has a third party. The company I work with, they have a couple of people already
Wow.
that they work with, that this is what they do, this is how they make their money, they fund these systems, because they get all the tax credits, so this is what they do. So all I had to do was say yes, and the company took care of everything else.
That sounds lovely. Sorry.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. What happens after 6 years when you are no longer leasing? What is the cost slash responsibility to you after 6 years?
So when we're no longer leasing, the third party vendor donates the system to the library, he gets that one final tax write-off. Then we get 100% of the energy savings. Right now, this third party vendor is basically acting as our electric company. So we write him a check every month for the energy that we use. Once the system becomes ours, it's free energy. But we will have to have a maintenance agreement with the solar company just to inspect things, make sure everything is still working. But that cost will be minimal compared to the energy savings we will be seeing.
So do you no longer get a bill from Ameren?
We do, but it's a smaller bill, because this does not offset 100% of our energy usage. But I think,
Well, when it does offset 100%, you might have answered this. I'm assuming you'll still have probably a little Ameren bill because of the use of the grid, the access part.
there will always be a small Ameren bill, because even if this offset 100% of our energy, we still get a small Ameren bill because we're using Ameren's infrastructure. So even if you're offset 100%, you'll still have a small bill from Ameren.
And one more comment, that kind of ties in with this. Do you have gas and electric? Are the savings you mentioned related to electric usage only?
This is electric usage usage only. This has nothing to do with gas usage.
Do we want to, talk more about solar before we switch gears? Lee, was that the end of your solar
That was the end
experience?
of my solar.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to go to the some person.
I think so. It does, if that works for you.
That works.
Okay. And then now I would like to introduce our second speaker today. We have an independent solar advocate and consultant, Steve Sommers, who's joining us today. He's got experience helping libraries implement the Illinois Solar for All program. And so Steve's going to talk a bit more about things on that side and be able to answer some questions that you may have. So Steve, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you. Lee, good to see you and good job. I think you were well trained in solar. So to go back and cover a couple of things, a kilowatt hour is the unit of electricity. And one of the benefits of solar, so the cost to an off-taker, to a customer, is the power, that kilowatt hour, it's the delivery of that power, and it's all of the taxes that go along with that power. So for Lee, once he owns the array, the power, the delivery of the power, and the taxes are all eliminated because Ameren doesn't even know that they're using that electricity. Everything I work on is considered behind the meter. So you've got a meter and then all of it going on is behind this meter. When you overgenerate, the meter runs backwards, acts kind of as a battery, kind of, right? Your overproduction goes to Ameren and then you bring it back again. Solar generates clearly like a bell curve, low in the winter, high in the summer, low in the winter. Usage, because of air conditioning, generally parallels that. Somebody was asking about gas. If you have an all-electric building, it's almost an inverted bell curve. You're using more electricity on the ends. Solar's a little tougher for that. Geothermal, some places have geothermal, it's more of a flat usage. Again, it doesn't work quite as well. So it essentially becomes a matter of how expensive is it to put the array on a building. Lee's building is a solid 2 stories, two and some change. So it was not inexpensive to get it up there. And then how much production does it have? Is it shaded? Is it a ground mount? Is it aimed at 30 degrees? And an investor, which Lee had, it will only go down to a minimum, right? So $100,000 array has gone below what his minimum is now, right? So it's getting tougher to get a third party to take projects of this scale. But the good news is that because of the Inflation Reduction Act, it now allows nonprofits and public facilities, nonprofits to take advantage of the tax benefits, as Lee was suggesting, was only available to tax-paying entities. So there is a process called elective pay that we're just sort of starting to wind up because it's an option now. So to answer your question, a car canopy is feasible. Like we can definitely build a car canopy, but the cost per production is so high that, you know, it would be prohibitive for an investor, for sure. An investor is going to look at the cost of it and the cost coming, the profits coming back.
The reason I asked that is we do not have a flat roof.
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing.
And we
And
don't have any land other than our parking spaces.
so eventually, car-covered parking will become less expensive. It'll become more ubiquitous.
Mhm.
And then there is a provision in the Inflation Reduction Act that instead of just the 30% tax benefit, if it's US or if it's domestic content, it'd be a 40% discount. But there's not enough US content to get there. So eventually, the cost of car canopies will come down, the incentives will come up, but it would still be a stretch.
Mhm.
Because putting electricity, putting an array on Lee's roof was probably about $3 a kilowatt. A car canopy is gonna be $4.50 or something, it's appreciably more. But if you can see the value of the shade and everything else over time, and there's no other way, it's a possibility. So the let me stick with Illinois Solar Farm. So there are three basic buckets of money available to an organization that is going solar. One is with the utility. It's called a smart inverter rebate. Ameren, if you're in Ameren territory, it's better than being in a co-op because they do give slightly better. The tariff is better and they give some benefits. There is a smart inverter rebate that comes from the utility. The federal government will give a 30% FITC, a tax credit, if it's domestic content or in an energy community, which Alton is an energy community, but most of the Metro East is not. All of Southern Illinois is. I could share maps that show where those are. So there is a federal benefit. And then there is a program called Illinois Shines that anybody in the state, for-profit, not-for-profit, residential, it's a program that incentivizes people to go solar. So the way it works is ComEd and Ameren collect a little bit of a fee from everybody who uses their system. That goes into a bucket, right? And that bucket, Illinois Shines can pay back people about 30% of a project could come back in an Illinois Shines refund or payment. Now, the thing with Illinois Solar for All, it's a more specific target. It's the same program, different bucket of money. So you need to be in specific geographic areas that are generally underserved communities. Or it can be energy justice community, which is, again, there are maps. If you are in that area, as Lee's library is, and if you're considered a critical service provider, which all libraries are, it's basically libraries, houses of worship, you know, you can imagine food pantries, shelters. There's a list of specific organizations that this program is aimed to benefit. Part of my difficulty is that the layer or the level at which an investor will take these projects is starting to raise a little bit, so that the focus now is becoming more this elective pay, where a library decides, we just want to do it. And I know a third party's not going to be interested because the cost and the production's a little off. It's a little bit of a small project. It could be a matter of needing to borrow that $100,000 to get back 60,000 from here and 30,000 from here and 10,000 from here, so that ostensibly you're going to get all of that money back fairly quickly, and you're going to own the array fairly quickly. All things being equal, I think the investor model, while slightly more expensive, it's only slightly more expensive and it's way less hassle. But sometimes it's just not an option because of the size of the array. Let me stop there. I can go down other routes like how solar works or whatever. Illinois is really a great state for solar. I mean, you guys may not realize it, but this is among the top handful of states in the country that incentivize this technology. So, questions to date? Questions so far?
There's one quick question in the chat. It says, did you say that nonprofits are currently eligible for tax incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yes. So the Inflation Reduction Act of November 2022 clearly expanded the benefit of what was a federal tax credit to only organizations that paid taxes to now be a benefit for non-tax paying entities. In essence, you submit as if you're a taxpayer and they send you a check as if it's a refund as a taxpayer. And so that's been a big change in my world, because I've been in this nonprofit public facility for a long time. So investors needed to be, because the investor, the other benefit an investor has that you guys wouldn't is they can depreciate the asset. So you can't depreciate it because, you know, it's a tax thing. The promise of the program is that actually per the letter of the program, it needs to be shown that you would save at least 65% of your electrical costs if you go this way. And to Lee's point, I think we modeled it's closer to 80%. For the electricity being generated by the array, it needs to be discounted so much, right? And for the first 15 years, somebody else is responsible for the maintenance and operation of the equipment, because the investor has gotten the credit from the organization claiming it, and that Illinois Solar for All incentive is based on the model generation of this array for 15 years. So the investor's gotten money saying this array is going to create this much energy over 15 years. So the organization, the program points back at the investor and says, okay, great, you're responsible for it to do that for 15 years. On an elective pay, and this has thrown things a little sideways, on an elective pay, it's the installer who is responsible for that 15 years of maintenance and warranty. And so either of those entities have to figure out, like, what's the risk? You know, how much is it gonna cost for us to cover this risk? And part of the reason that I've become an independent consultant is that the organization I was with is just really not, they've abandoned kind of the smaller project. Like, Lee, your project now, we wouldn't build. We've stepped away from it. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of broadening my exposure to different installers. My expertise is in this program, it's Illinois Solar for All. There is a document stack. You remember the document stack? Yeah. About 15 items that the program wants. Most of them we produce, but you know, ownership of the or lease, you have to get permission from the landlord. You have to prove that you're a nonprofit. You have to get letters from organizations showing that you're established. You have to write a letter saying that, you know, no one thing is very much effort. But the accumulation of the documents to submit the application is really where I bring my expertise and just knowing solar and solar design. And then the third-party investor, so you guys have a sense of like who this person is. The one that we've been using, the one that owns Lee's, is an organization up in Chicagoland who know real estate folks who need this sort of tax credit, right? It's a very specific sort of, if you're gonna take a lot of these tax credits, they need to be used for, I think it's passive income, not an accountant. But there is an appetite for these, but again, they need to be a certain size for this investor to be interested in. Same amount of paperwork, right? So that's why it doesn't want to do a lot of little ones. Yeah. Trying to think if there, I mean, there's so many other layers to this, but Illinois Solar for All is the program that I've become an expert in. There are geographic areas that it applies in. If you're outside that geographic area, it's still, I think, reasonable to look at solar. Libraries generally have, short of a Carnegie library, which I think yours is the only one we've done. Libraries tend to have, you know, it's a single-story building, and they tend to have a flat roof. Not all, some get fancier. So even outside the Illinois Solar for All program, to put money in to get these lower incentives back, it may only be 5 years for it to pay for itself, right? So you're gonna pay 100,000 and you're gonna get 40 from here and 30 from here and 20 from here because it's not Illinois Solar for All. You're out $40,000 essentially. but this array produces $9,000 worth of energy a year. So mathematically, you can see that your return on investment is not that long. With an Illinois Solar for All, with an elective pay direct purchase, it's going to be like a year or two before everything's paid. And if it's a big enough project, I just did one in Centralia for the rec center, where the incentives are a couple $100,000 larger than the investment. So they're putting in 2.3 million and they're gonna get back 2.47 million in incentives, right? So for them, it's like a zero return. But it's a big, massive project. They have to borrow all this money and Lee's issue with getting things hooked up, I mean, part of that's Belleville. And Belleville's, and other municipalities can be tough. So we are, a solar company is really a construction company. They have to deal with the permits, they have to deal with the utility, and they have to deal with the jurisdiction or the authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ. So each one is different. We put ballasted roof arrays. Sometimes if it's a sloped roof, right, we put fixed and then ground mount if you have the space. But a lot of times, the Illinois Solar for All program covers, it's a more urban or small town central, so it's hard to find land.
Thank you. Any questions?
What if you're currently in a co-op? You're not
Elec-
anywhere.
Electrical co-op.
Mhm.
So the program, part of the basic requirement of the Illinois Solar for All program is that it needs to be proven that you're gonna save at least 65% of whatever you're paying. So it's a little harder to show because some of the benefits may not exist. But instead of 80%, maybe it is more like 65%. Co-ops are not a deal killer.
Okay.
I do projects in Springfield. Springfield's not as bad as Belleville, but it's sort of. Yeah, they'll work, but again, at scale, like larger scale, like imagine a Goodwill or a Salvation Army, something that's, yeah. Smaller projects do better if they're in a larger utility.
Sure.
Okay, I don't see that any questions have come in on the chat. So we're gonna switch gears. We still have time for questions, but we're gonna switch gears to another initiative that Lee is pursuing. Do you want me to start off with the video? Or you want to
Yeah,
do?
let me start with a
Thank
quick
you.
introduction on the video.
Okay.
So after I got the solar array installed, my thoughts then turned towards electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging. That seemed to be the next logical progression for me. There wasn't a program similar to Illinois Solar for All for electric vehicle charging when I started looking. But sometimes when you start asking questions and talk to the right people at the right time, things happen. And a lot of you remember when the I Love My Library grant from Ameren came out and they were sending $2,000 checks to everybody. Well, when I was talking to them, giving them my information, sending the check, I just asked them, I want to do EV charging. What can you do to help? About a week later, I got a phone call from Ameren. You know what? We're working with this company. They're doing EV charging using the Infrastructure Act. They want to expand their footprint. Let me put them in touch with you. So they put me in touch with this company out of Oregon called Fourth Mobility, who has a grant through the Infrastructure Act to put EV charging stations and ride share, and we're gonna talk about that in a moment too, in 9 states. Illinois was not one of those states, but Missouri was. They did not get the participation in Missouri that they wanted, so they got permission to widen the scope slightly into Illinois, and I'm able to take advantage of this. And I will say, I spoke with them 2 days ago. They are able to do one more library in the near metros. You have to be relatively close to St. Louis for them to do it, but they did want to say they can take one more library under this expanded program, but it has to be someplace near St. Louis, you know, Valley.
So we're only 6 miles away.
Yeah. So, this is a little video talking about the program, and then once that plays, then I'll come back and talk about it some more.
Increasing access to electric cars and charging is a crucial step for fostering the adoption of EVs nationwide, especially among lower income and the elderly. Now, a new rideshare program is making electric vehicles available at locations across the country and delivering a greener way to get around town. The Affordable Mobility Platform, or AMP, is a national initiative funded by the U.S. Department of Energy that will establish EV car-sharing fleets around the country at convenient parking lots, affordable housing developments, transit hubs, and tourist areas. AMP is an extension of several successful pilot programs managed by nonprofits Fourth and Mobility Access Group that have proven the concept in Oregon and California over the past few years. GoForth is an app and web-based program that offers affordable local short-term electric vehicle rentals to use for errands, shopping, and appointments, or just to test drive an EV without the pressure of a salesperson coming along for the ride. GoForth uses the established MyoCar Networks app. Members can use the app, website, or phone to locate available vehicles and make a reservation, unlock it remotely or with an RFID card. Then use the vehicle and return it to the pickup location on their own schedule.
So with EV car sharing, it's a way to spread out the cost. So for one fee of around $5 per hour, folks get to use a car, which comes with insurance, roadside assistance, the electric fuel, the charging for that, to really bring down a lot of those upfront barriers that come to owning any vehicle, but also especially with EVs.
Better yet, the first 4-hour rental is free. Users must pre-qualify for membership to ensure they have a valid license and maintain a clean driving record. Now active in Oregon and Washington State, AMP programs are also rolling out in Nevada, North Carolina, New Mexico, Idaho, Michigan, and Missouri. Also riding under the AMP umbrella, St. Louis's Silvers program follows a different car-sharing path with a fleet of Chevy Bolt EVs based at 2 downtown community centers, providing free on-request rides and delivering meals to elderly city residents.
Our biggest route like today, we around 40, 45 to 50. When I get through with the Meals on Wheels, that's to help me out on the side doing medical transportation. It helps me out compared to the van. I can get in tight spaces, I can maneuver a lot faster, and makes the job a lot easier.
Through June of 2023, the Silvers program has delivered more than 100,000 meals to homebound residents and provided over 2,000 free rides, all while saving 45,000 pounds of CO2 emissions from entering the atmosphere.
I love the EVs. It kind of grew on me.
They actually asked for these vehicles over the other ones. They enjoy driving in the electric vehicles, something new for them, and they thoroughly enjoy driving them. And we only have 3 here, so not all of them get the get the opportunity to be in the electric vehicle. They do fight for it though.
The AMP program is delivering on-demand, affordable, emissions-free drive time and community services to those areas of the country that need it the most, and giving back environmental benefits to all of us.
So that is a program that we are benefiting from. Again, this is no cost to the library. They do all of the work. They do all the construction installation. It does tie into our electricity, so we We'll be using our electricity to charge these vehicles, but we get to charge for that. So it will be a little bit of a revenue generator for the library. We are also getting a ride share card, so we will have, essentially, we'll be checking out a card.
That's very much fun. So this is on your property,
It will be, yes,
and are those vehicles fully electric? They don't have to put any gasoline?
fully electric.
Wow. Well, this is very interesting.
Will you take your insurance for those or will it?
The
Wow.
company handles all the insurance. Literally, all we have to do is provide space for the charging station and parking and promote it. We do have to give up 2 dedicated parking spaces, 1 dedicated space for the rideshare card, and the second dedicated space for public EV charging that'll be available to the public.
Wow. I could do that.
And the company takes care of everything. If they forget to charge it and the battery dies, they call the company, they send a tow truck. If they don't bring it back, they have GPS tracking. The company contacts the police. The company sends a tow truck and brings the car back. We don't really have to do anything with the management and maintenance of it. They handle all of that.
So the revenue that you will get on this, does it come back to you through the card company or is it a separate charge?
It's a separate charge. When they install the EV charging, there'll be a credit card terminal and possibly tackle the app as well. So when someone plugs in to charge, they'll have to turn on the charging station like you turn on a gas pump with their credit card, and it charges by kilowatt hour.
And then that comes to you.
That will come to the library. It's not gonna be a ton of money, but it will be a little bit.
It's kind of like we do the fishing and hunting licenses. We don't make hardly anything on them. But that money actually comes back to us from the company. It doesn't come to us directly.
Right, this will come to us directly. And just a few numbers, because when I started doing this, I kind of ran a few numbers just to see the proliferation of electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging. So as of March, and these are the most accurate numbers so far, there are over 2.4 million electric vehicles in the United States. Almost 7% of all new cars are electric or electric hybrids. There are about 3,000 cars respectively in Madison and St. Clair County. Now, compare that with public EV charging stations. In the Metro East, there are 8.
Wow, yeah. And as an EV owner, they don't all work, so.
So, is there a need for EV charging? Absolutely. Because as I said, there are 8 public EV charging stations in the Metro East.
Are they all in Collinsville, the ACs? There's one in Troy,
you
know.
From Alton.
So, I know exactly where they are. Swift Campus in Belleville has, I believe, 4. Commerce Bank in Shiloh has 1. Crossroads Center Shopping Mall in Fairview Heights has about 4. Offenburg Nissan in Fairview Heights has 1. Hampton Inn in O'Fallon has 1. Walmart in Collinsville, Casino Queen in East St. Louis, and Casey's in Collinsville. Those are all public EV charging stations in the Metro East.
Now, I know there are others, what makes it public?
You can pull up to it, plug your car to it.
Okay,
There are others, a lot of car dealerships have EV charging stations. Some private businesses have charging stations that are available for their employees. But these are the charging stations that are listed on the EV app where you can just drive up to and plug your car into.
Like some hotels have them, but you have to be a guest.
well, there are several in front of the Panera in Alton that are almost always people coming in and out of there.
And I think there's some in front of where Kmart used to be.
Yeah, what are these in Granite?
Yeah.
There's like 4 or 5 there.
And they may not be on the app.
Okay.
That's the other thing too.
You would have to know to go
You have
there.
to
but
know.
You have to know.
Okay.
These are the ones that upload their location on the app, so when you're traveling, when you have all electric EV, you don't just jump in your car and do a road trip, you plan your trip based on where the charging stations are, so these are the ones that have upload the information on the app.
And aren't there two different types of plugins that they're trying to get rid of the older ones, going to the newer Tesla model plugins?
Yeah, most EV charging are going with the Tesla model, that's a more universal, there are actually more than two types. But those are mainly the older vehicles, most of the plugins are the universal plugins that will fit the majority of EV vehicles produced today, but it won't fit them all.
If I may add to that, there's kind of three types, three levels of charging. Level one is like a 110 outlet. Level two is like a 220, like a dryer. And then the Tesla fast charge is like a 440, right? Like the infrastructure to do the Tesla quick charge is very expensive. So most people would do a level two, I'm sure it's a level two charger. And then I have had some experience where if a facility is able to overbuild solar, then that might allow them to install car chargers and then make a profit off of selling that electricity. And there are really great incentives, again, in the state of Illinois for putting in level two car chargers that are to be shared. Right, so if you're gonna put one in for your own, it might be $40,000 and there's, a few incentives for it. If you're offering to allow it to be used by the public, like 90% of that's gonna be incentivized.
Wow.
So, yeah. You would want to, as a public facility, you'd wanna be offering it to the general public. And I've got a couple of customers who use it for their fleet, but then they also offer it to people when it's open. Yeah.
Just a couple more slides.
Sorry, will you let me share the, whoops.
Well, yeah, I wanna do that.
I will put you on that.
Thank you. I have, parking spots in my back lot for the work.
whoops.
Next one.
There. Go next one.
Next. So here are a couple of links to some libraries in Illinois that have installed EV charging stations. You can kind of look to see what some other libraries have done. They're all up in the Chicago area, as you can imagine, but they're all libraries that are doing this. And then the next slide, so if the affordable mobility platform isn't an option for you, but you still want to go with EV charging, there are grants out there through the federal government, through the same program, but not using the affordable mobility platform, where organizations can install EV charging stations using federal funding. The main limiting factor with this grant is you have to be 1 mile from a major interstate. So this is geared mainly for people on the highway, so you have to be within a 1 mile radius from an interstate, but if that's you, and you feel like going through the arduous federal grant process.
Do you know the likelihood of this test with being so close to St. Louis could be expanded to other libraries throughout Illinois? That may not be the question, I'm just curious.
This particular program, no, because the funding cycle for this particular program is running out. Now, if they renew the funding, then they may expand it to other states. But for right now, through this affordable mobility program, not right now.
And we did get some questions in from the chat or comments. Who is offering the EV charging incentives?
The federal government. This is through the infrastructure plan that President Biden passed some time ago to increase the EV infrastructure across the country. So these are federal grants and federal incentives.
And I think you answered one of these questions with other ones. Do you have to pay for the electric charges for charging the vehicles?
So what I'm getting, I'll get one dual port charging station, so I can charge two vehicles. One of those ports will be dedicated to my rideshare vehicle, so that's the only vehicle that can plug up to it. And of course, that vehicle will be charged at no cost because that's part of the program. The second port will be available to the public, and that will be a fee-based charging system where they'll have to pay to charge, but it's minimal, like $8 to $12 per kilowatt, 8 to 12 cents rather per kilowatt hour is the average for most of these charging stations that you have to pay for. So it's some money, but it's not gonna be millions.
Well, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Steve. We are just now at 11:01. If you have any questions, if you want to reach out, Lee, would you be willing to answer any questions if people have any afterwards?
Reach out.
And yeah, so want to thank both Lee, the Executive Director of Belleville Public Library, and Steve Sommers, a solar advocate, for sharing their experience and their expertise with us today. I want to give a quick thank you to 6 Mile Regional Library District for hosting us.
6 miles from St. Louis.
Yes, 6 miles from St. Louis. And so it's 11:02. We're going to take a quick break to get switched around to our Members Matter meeting. So we will reconvene at 11:05. That's 3 minutes. We got it. So, okay, we will see you all again soon.
Thank you again.
Yeah.